to get us started.
The world is ending.
What? When?
What?
When?
At the end of this episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, then that means nobody's ever gonna actually hear it because it ends after this episode. That means it'll never be released.
More on that later.
More on that later.
Yeah.
I have a question that I've been thinking of asking for like the past 5 episodes, but it hasn't really fit into anywhere. So, it's okay. Are you an early bird or like a night owl? And for those who are unfamiliar, an early bird is someone who can wake up and really likes the morning and isn't tired and whatever. And a night owl is someone who likes to stay up late and do things at night rather than in the early mornings.
Okay, so that's a really interesting question. I've actually given this a lot of thought in the past. A lot of times when I'm with other people, I like to stay up late. And, like, you know, I mean, it's just fun to stay up late because it's thrilling because there's more time in the day. And, like, the weight of the day's pressures seem to, like, alleviate for some reason since it's night, which is nice. But when I'm alone, I don't like to stay up late because it feels like I'm kind of wasting my time. And it feels like it's still the day and I still should be working on things. So, I mean, the rare times I'd stay up late, I know last year I used to stay up late a lot to get more work done, but that was a bad idea. Because my preference is to get to bed at a decent time, get at least 7.5, 8 hours. I can't really sleep more than 8.5 hours, but then wake up, feel amazing, and then get a bunch done right when the day starts. So I'd say I'm more of an early bird, yeah. What about you?
Well, I feel the same way about if I stay up late and I'm alone, then I just feel like I'm wasting my time. Because I could be going to sleep earlier and then waking up earlier and then with a fresh start. So I feel better when I'm like up earlier. So I definitely think I'm an early bird. However, if I am with a group of friends and it's like 11 o'clock or something, and which isn't super late, but still, then I am more energized. But as soon as those people leave or I leave, then I'm just tired. And so
yeah, it's just done
it's
for,
just
yeah.
It's just a crash. It's just because if you're more extroverted like I am, then you like to be with other people and that like fills you up with energy. And so I think that's my final answer. Final answer.
Locked in. All right,
Locked
6,000 points.
Really? Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yeah. What do I...
Also, you're getting a new car. It doesn't work, but it's new.
Actually, something about that is we just got a new truck, and it's so tiny. It's a 2000 Ford Ranger. And it's so tiny. It's funny because it looked really big on the pictures, and then they brought it home. I was like, "What? What is this? It's so tiny." But it's really funny because
Let me look this thing up.
yeah, it's pretty interesting, and it's really unfortunate because I go over to it, and even from far away, it looks pretty like a decent size. You go up to it, and it's so small. It's like shorter than I'm taller than like the top of it, and so I go around the back, and the back window, like the back windshield, kind of, it's just completely shattered. There's no window left, and there's just jagged pieces of glass in there. And if you pull down the tailgate, or you can't really, because one, like when you pull the lever that usually unlocks it, and then you can pull it down, the left side is broken, so you have to reach through the broken window. And then squeeze them, like pinch them together, and then you can open it. So it's pretty great though. It's really cool, and it handles not super poorly, especially for a 2000. I've only driven it once, but it's pretty funny how.
Okay.
But it runs really well, and we got a really good price. I think it was like $800 or something, which is insane.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's really good. I'm saying, you know, pour another 100, maybe 1,000 for a solid axe lift. I believe that adds roughly 4 to 5 feet to your vehicle, if you know what I'm talking about.
You mean to make it higher, taller?
Yeah. You know when people get those absurdly massive wheels, and then you got that
for, like, monster
lift
trucks.
underneath.
Yeah,
like a monster truck. Yeah, and then people will be intimidated by your very small 2000 Ford Ranger.
Yeah, get a taller car to compensate for the stoutness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, maybe I should just buy a monster truck. Just buy one. $5. That's my final offer.
Oh. I mean, yeah, you could just get a monster truck. Yeah.
Could you imagine driving a monster truck like around, taking up both lanes?
Well, no, I was suggesting like you know how you can do a lift on your vehicle so that you can do this to most vehicles, usually trucks, where where you make it way taller. Like I don't understand the practical use.
Well, yeah, because and then you have to like depending. Okay, I've seen one that's like, okay, so it's just a normal truck, but it's been raised up off the ground like by 6 feet probably, and so they had like a half of a ladder sticking from the driver's side that like folds underneath the car, and then it folds out, and then you have to climb up to get into the vehicle. So that's an example of something that you probably shouldn't do, especially because that's way too tall for a truck that shouldn't be that tall.
I'm looking at pictures of this, and there's this one where this dude is standing next to his vehicle, and his head doesn't reach the bottom. Like, his vehicle is above the head, because these wheels are just like tractor wheels. This is so dumb.
What did you Google?
I Googled just solid axle swap, which I found. I was Googling around what the different kinds of those are called. I wish I was a mechanic and I understood that stuff and I actually knew it. I think it's probably a kid, I think. Hold on. Let me go on. This is on the Ford forums. Wow.
The Fordums?
We fell into this rabbit hole a little too quickly.
That's fine. Welcome to the world of our podcast, which is ending soon. More on that later.
Oh, yeah. By the way.
By the way, so yeah, how about, okay, I'm gonna Google really high car axles and see what comes up. Okay, I'm Googling it. Well, that doesn't help. Axle swap, maybe.
Yeah, try axle swap.
Yeah. Okay, well, really nothing more from what I was just seeing. So, maybe really tall cars. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I Googled really tall cars.
Oh my gosh.
Did you Google that too?
Yeah, I did.
First car at the top?
Yeah.
I will leave a picture of this in the show notes. My goodness, this is amazing. I love it. Oh, that's so awesome.
I really hope, I mean, functional or not, I hope that's real. Like, I hope we're...
Yeah, seriously. Okay, so I'm gonna say word of the day, and then you're gonna echo word of the day. Okay, ready? Word of the day.
Word of the day.
There we go. There it is. Perfect. Okay.
Sorry, Perfect. I did that on purpose because it just sounded so funny. Okay.
Word of the day.
What is our word of the day?
Our word of the day is ephemera. So
what?
Ephemera. So have you ever heard the word ephemeral?
Yes.
For those who don't know, the word ephemeral means like not lasting, short lasting. What's an example of something that's ephemeral? Like a bubble. A bubble is ephemeral because it's only there for like a little bit.
Food.
Food. Depending on who you give it to, yes.
I'd say like cigarettes. I'm trying to think of good ones, but like it's a very temporal use. I mean,
okay, so when you Google ephemeral, the example that it says is fashions are ephemeral because they don't last for very long, which is a good example. So like fashion statements, like bell bottoms. Bell bottoms didn't last very long. It lasted for like 2 years in the 70s, I think, but I don't know. I wasn't there. Anyway. So what stems from that is the word ephemera, which is a noun, and it is things that exist or are used for or enjoyed for a very short time. So I used it, or it was used in the context of like a garage sale, and they were saying that we're selling these things and other ephemera. I don't exactly know what they meant by that, but I Googled it, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So, ephemera.
Oh, I see. There's like 2 uses here.
Really? Are there...
well...
There's also
similar.
items of collectible memorabilia, typically written or printed ones that were originally expected to have only a short-term usefulness or popularity. Okay, that's neat. So that's
Right.
the word of the day.
Like old stamps.
Like old stamps, exactly. The example that they have is Mickey Mouse Ephemera. I don't know what that... Should I Google that?
Sure. It's gonna be something. I'm trying to think of what Mickey Mouse have. I don't know. What do you find?
I don't know. That's weird. Mickey Ephemera collection on Pinterest? That's
I found this image.
in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm gonna put in the show notes because normally I just keep going about my day with this, but I'm sorry, this is too ridiculous.
Something ridiculous? On the internet? No.
No, this is like, I don't. I mean,
It seems as though you're dumbfounded. Is it
I'm
that?
dumbfounded because
Wow,
I
okay.
don't. It's an image of a thing that's really like absurd and abstract looking. I'm just gonna send it to you. You can have your take. I don't know. I can't make head or tail of this.
Oh, that's a jackrabbit.
That's a jackrabbit.
Yeah.
Why is it so scary looking?
I don't know. It's
Why-
terrifying.
Why is it giving me nightmares? Because I don't remember seeing a jackrabbit and thinking, "Wow, that's terrifying."
Wait, that's not a jackrabbit. What am I thinking? Jackalope. It's a jackalope.
A jackal.
Jackalope.
Oh, a jackalope. Of
A
course,
jackalope.
yeah. Obviously, everyone knows what a jackalope is. Is that an antelope and a jackrabbit?
Yeah. Oh, the jackalope is a mythical animal of North America folklore described as a jackrabbit with an antelope horns.
Got it.
There you go. It's a jackrabbit.
Well, it's not a very mythical or cute looking one. I'll
yeah, that
say
one's
that
that's
much.
terrifying. It kind of looks like a mix of a dragon, a lion dragon with the weird horns. I will put that in the show notes.
Word of the day, everyone.
Word of the day, ephemera. Use it. Before the podcast, Tendo was doing some practicing for his microphone, and his voice got extremely high, and it looked like sounded like an entirely different person. So, I was going to ask you, like, can you shift your voice in certain ways, or like accents or impressions or something that you can do? Like,
Actually, no. Particularly, I'm probably the worst at that. That I would say out
Really?
of the friends that I have. Yeah, mostly because a lot of it's just like going for it and trying it, and I'm afraid of doing things incorrectly because there's people I know that are very good at impressions.
yeah, I know some
I-
people who are good at impressions too.
I guess I just haven't explored, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I can make my voice decently high. I mean, I sing tenor. I mean, I don't know. Not particularly. I don't have any. Oh, I used to, but I don't have any like characters that I play
What do you mean
or
you
that I've
used
come up
to?
with. Like back when I made a lot of videos, like I'd use certain voices, just to be funny, and they kind of turned into these characters. Not characters, but a persona that would be linked to them, if that makes any sense. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. They're not like named characters, but it's like certain moods portrayed in a certain voice.
Right.
For example,
Like, this is my like, I'm not very smart and I'm making assumptions voice. I don't know. Do you have anything like that?
well, sometimes I'm like, when there's something that's absurdly like posh or fancy, I'm like, yes, quite fancy with my tea and crumpets. I use that voice. Or there's like the, like, that's really the only one that I use on a regular basis, and it's quite. Oh, and there's also like with my sister and stuff, we're like, hey, we're from Brooklyn, and we're really bad at it, but like we're like, hey, we're walking here, and we were making.
Oh my gosh.
And then we were like making some Italian sodas, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were like, hey, get your flavor. And then I was like, I don't know what flavor to choose.
Oh my gosh, I actually do have one.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I can't, I mean, I shouldn't really talk about it. It's just among my circle of friends that I have, but there's a certain character named Jeff
Oh, okay.
that we play. That he has a personality and a voice, and
And do all your friends use it? Like whenever?
Yes, all of my close friends
that's awesome.
use it.
That's
way
awesome.
too much.
Oh,
that's no, it's hilarious. No, it's a good time. I just completely forgot about that.
Okay, are you gonna give an example of who Jeff is and what he's like?
This is Jeff. Jeff he's not very smart, but sometimes he has an idea, and he usually he doesn't finish his sentences. He just kind of stops. And sometimes he just stares at you and just says, "Yeah,
that's
I'm
perfect.
Jeff."
That's awesome. And the fact that his name is Jeff, it makes it all the way better. It would have been better if his name was like Daryl or something.
He has a wife named Dana.
Really?
Yeah,
cool.
she has more of a Paula Deen voice.
How the heck does this thing? How did you start something like that?
Just like originally it was like mocking a single like person.
And then it evolves.
And then it evolves into its own entity that's so different that you have to give it a new name.
And it can't be controlled by any mortal.
Right, like Rick and Morty, like it was a parody, it was a spoof.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a lot of video games like that.
Now it's Rick and Morty. So
right.
Oh, and there's also one more that I'm not good at any of these impressions, but they make my friends laugh and stuff, and so I do them in certain contexts. And so there's like the Russian accent, and then they're like, "Hello, I'm from Russia," and then we're like, "Yeah, vodka. Take wolf, tie rock around leg, and throw into lake." And then
Russian stereotype, yes.
Russian stereotype, yes, of course. Take vodka here, have it. Yum yum yum. But I used to do it a lot more until I was at youth group, and one of my friends was Russian. She wasn't offended, but I was like, maybe I should stop doing this.
The strange thing is, Russian stereotype jokes only came about in my group when there was a Russian person there.
That's awesome.
Not because we were making fun of them, but because that was their humor, was making bad jokes about their own people and vice versa. And we'd make jokes about us and how we're not very smart. So, well, I mean,
that's good.
People.
Yeah, it's really funny because I found that, well, okay, so where I live, it's adjacent to the border. Well, I don't live like near the border, but Washington is adjacent to the border. So where I live, there's a lot of Canadians around. Mm-hmm. And so I've discovered through the Canadians coming to our state and driving that they're pretty bad at driving because they have different rules and they don't understand how things work here, even though that a lot of the rules are the same. But that's irrelevant. I can rant about that for ages. But Canadians are very easy to stereotype and make fun of, and it's awesome. So that's what we do. I only ever do it when there's Canadians, like if I have a friend that is Canadian that is with me, because
that makes it better, you know?
Yeah, it does. I don't like
do whatever you want.
I don't like stereotyping and making fun of people if they're not there to hear me, because they wouldn't understand. Well, okay, because that's at that point it's just rude and it's being insensitive. But when there's someone that you know that falls under that category, like a Canadian that is a friend of yours or someone with blonde hair, then you can make fun of them. So like there's like dumb blonde jokes and whatever, and I can tell them, I feel like I can tell them because I'm blonde. So there's also like jokes about moose and maple syrup and stuff.
Oh yes, of course.
That pertain to Canadians. And there's also obvious like Australian stereotypes, but also another reason that I'd like to have Fez on the show sometime, which I've told him this already, that he'll be on our next show, whatever it ends up being. So
yes,
watch out, world. Here comes Fez. So I'd like to discuss with him stereotypes that they have of America, because I can't really think of any except for like, yeah, America, patriotism, and like guns and
being
eagles.
Overly violent. I mean, you know what? We'll save that for the episode.
We'll save that for the episode. But I don't know. Are we just not super stereotyped or something?
I could name off quite a few, and
right now.
Right now?
Right now.
Well, I was waiting it's for the episode. I mean, obviously we cover everything in sugar. And
Yeah,
we take
deep fry everything.
we take other people's cultures and we butcher them.
Yep.
And we say, hey, look, it's your culture. And they're like, no, this is some horrible abomination you just created. And we're like, no, it's your culture, right? And they're like, no.
No,
and then we do the
not.
same to their food. And obviously we make a lot of stereotypes and misrepresentation.
Yep.
And being overly protective of certain things we have that may or may not involve gunpowder. And large corporations, but hey, I mean, what country doesn't have those? I don't know. I mean,
those are some good
could go on
stereotypes.
all day.
Well, I don't. Okay, there's things that were in there that are like stereotypes that you can make fun of, and others that are just true, which is sad, like the corporations and us taking other cultures and stomping them to the ground, which is totally true of America. But I don't know. It's less of a.
Yeah, I guess it's not a stereotype.
It's less of a stereotype than every Canadian loves maple syrup and every Australian plays didgeridoo, but every American has a gun and deep fries all their food. Those are some good stereotypes for.
There you go.
Yeah, perfect. And of course, the next podcast will be an entirely different podcast, so this won't even be relevant. So
we haven't even discussed that.
So we can discuss it twice.
What's going on? What's going on? What do you mean the podcast is ending? What do you mean the world is ending? There's gonna be a new podcast? What podcast?
Okay, should we discuss that and then discuss the Scarlet Ibis? We can finish off?
No. Let's discuss the Scarlet Ibis first. No. Let's talk about that other. Let's talk about the ending first.
For those who are very confused about the fact that our podcast is ending, well, first off, I'd like to say our podcast is ending, but don't fret. It's this podcast is ending. The Nomich and Supertendoboy podcast will end, and so what's going to happen is it will no longer be available to download on iTunes or Google Play or any other audio formats. However, they will be on YouTube for you to listen to and stream forever. They'll be there. They'll stay there. We will not be making any more episodes of this podcast. However, there will be another podcast in the future. And I'll release another episode after this, like a micro episode, explaining all the details for that. We're not going to release any information about the new podcast because we don't even know all the details. But, and the reason that we're doing this is because it's a branding thing. Because the thing about this podcast is, I think that it's a good podcast, and I think it's very entertaining to listen to, and you could agree too, right, Tendo?
Yeah.
Well,
sure.
Have you actually listened to any of the podcast episodes, like all the way through?
Yes, I've listened to a few.
Okay, cool. So, I think even for me to listen to it is entertaining, and clearly you guys like it because of the great feedback that you've been giving us. However, the first episode, that's officially the first episode, that's on iTunes and all other formats, is terrible, and we don't know what we're talking about, and the audio quality is just horrid. So, what we're going to do is we're going to start a new thing, because the fact is, if we just change our name or something, then the only way that we can get listeners is to have you guys or other people suggest the podcast to others by word of mouth or through Facebook or something or social media. That's the only way that you could do it. And you say, hey, the first 3 episodes are pretty bad, but like you can go on to the rest of them and they'll be great. But the thing is, that means the people on iTunes and Google Play won't ever find us because they'll listen to the first episode, assume that all the rest of the podcast is like that, and never listen to it again. Yeah, I think that it was a bad idea for us in the first place to start, or for me at least, to start the new reiteration of the podcast on episode 2. That was silly of me, and I regret it. But it's an opportunity for a new thing. So starting after this month of September, it will be completely closed, and you will be able to find all the links and stuff and where you can find it in the show notes for the next micro episode that will be coming out. It'll be like 5 or 10 minutes explaining everything that you need to know and where you can find us and what we'll be talking about and stuff. So that's why we're ending the podcast. Don't worry, it'll still be us doing it, and we'll still have our personality in it, and so we'll still have things like discussions and whatever, and go on rabbit trails and have as much fun as we are with this one. So
right.
we need to discuss the Scarlet Ibis. So,
Yeah.
now, the Scarlet Ibis is a short story written by James something. What was his name? I don't remember.
James Hurst.
James Hurst?
Hurst.
Hurst. James Hurst. Yeah, okay. So, and it was released in 1960. So, in the show notes, there will be a PDF where you can read it. And if you haven't read it already, then you can read it, then come back, and then listen to the rest of it. However, if you've already read it, come on through. If you don't feel like reading it because you're lazy, come on through. We're just going to get right into the discussion. So it will probably be wise for you to at least look up a summary of it. So, Tendo, first off, what were your overall thoughts of this story?
Of this story?
The Scarlet Ibis, yes.
Okay, I liked it because it was okay. So here's the thing. It was this predictable. It's pretty easily predicted, but so are a lot of short stories because the twists are well, they're pretty easy to see coming because you've read other stories that are similar. But it had really good
foreshadowing.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, it had. Well, okay, I was gonna say it has good poetic patterns. I'm not.
Yes.
Poetic patterns. It had great metaphors. And the voice was really believable of the protagonist.
The protagonist being the narrator?
Yes, the narrator. Sorry, yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I love the writing style, and some phrases are just so freaking poetic, and then it goes back into the head of a child, and I really, really like this thing. And also, the foreshadowing, even in the very, very beginning, it says something about this is where Doodle was, or oh right, and I remember Doodle. So at the beginning of or at the very end of the second paragraph, it says something something something, and I remember Doodle, which implies that he's no longer around. So this story is feeding you a bunch of information saying this kid won't be around. You don't exactly know why, but it can be assumed that it's death because of all the different imagery that is painted for you in the first paragraph and the first page. So,
right.
But yeah, I love this story so much. It's much darker than Walter Mitty, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
yeah, just a little bit darker.
Yeah.
There's a lot more death.
Yeah, smidgen more death.
Just a tad bit more. So, I guess, how many questions do you have? Because if I have more, then I'll start and then I'll end.
Let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, I have 12 questions.
Really? Okay.
2 for every page.
Oh, shoot. Oh, man. I wrote 1 for every 2 pages. Shoot. Okay, well.
I hold on. Can I just defend that most of them are just stringed on thoughts of multiple questions?
That's totally fine. That's totally fine. You'll start though. You can have I have the first question.
All right. So my first question is, who is Doodle, and did he die? Because I mean, ultimately, he's remembering him. I want to know, did he die? You know, some of these questions are more of like I'm asking the universe, and some of them are just questions I had when reading the story.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
clearly, now that you've read the story, you know that Doodle is his brother and that he is dead. But I understand. Yes. I understood. I'm glad that you asked that question, as you were reading at the very beginning. That's cool. But yeah,
it's like my number one question because the whole story, I'm like, this is a short story. He's got to die.
He's got to die.
And I just keep reading. I'm like, he's gonna die any second now, and I don't want it to happen. I love him.
Right? That's the genius of the story, because you know he's gonna die. You don't know exactly when, and as you feel, oh, this is the moment, and then you keep reading, and it's boom, he's dead. And then my heart just dropped, and I was like, oh no. And I've already read this story before, so I already knew exactly how it was gonna end, and it was still gut wrenching, and I love it. Okay, brilliant writing.
I might as well say while we're still on this, these
Absolutely.
First 2 pages before you say, I have this is a question that's never really answered, but I ask these a lot in short stories. So I'm asking, does Doodle have a birth defect, or is it a genetic problem, like with chromosomes or something? Like, I want to know if this exists, like whatever he has, and how it works, because I'm really curious. Like in Frozen, when that came back out like multiple years ago, I watched it once, and the whole time I was pestered by why does she have these abilities?
Right.
I mean, that really pulled at me. And there's a lot of short stories where there's some power happening that is just never explained. And like, you could do it correctly. Like in a lot of horror, they do it correctly by vaguely saying that it's a spirit, or spewing some science that doesn't make any sense, or by bringing like mental illness into it. But like here, it doesn't take away from the story. I'm just really curious if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also it mentions him not being all there, which means that has some mental issues. But I understand, like, was it a birth defect? Well, okay, it says something about a call, which I didn't exactly know what that is, but it has a footnote. It says a membrane sometimes surrounding the head. So it said he was born in a call. So if you Google call, I don't exactly know what that is, but okay. So it's like he was born, the womb came out as well, essentially, is what it is.
Yeah.
And so with that cut off circulation or something that caused his brain to not develop correctly. And so that it explains that. So, but also I wasn't completely familiar with what a call is. However, when you Google it and stuff, then you know. So I guess that answers that question. So it's more of a birth defect and less of a genetic thing.
I think so, yeah.
But also something that's similar to this. I just watched Forrest Gump, and I don't know if you've ever seen that. But in that film, he's a very slow human being, and mentally slow, not physically slow. He's very fast physically. But in that movie, he doesn't walk correctly, and a little bit in, he just keeps running, and he runs, and he breaks his braces, his leg braces, and he just keeps running, and he can run better than anyone else. And so I think that's an example of a mental thing that's tremendously affecting the physical, like, for example,
maybe, but as we go throughout the story, I feel like Doodle on a few occasions proves that he is all there, and that they're I don't know. I never got the impression that he ever had like any mental issues. I mean, from the young age that he lived to.
Yeah. When he was in the go-kart for the first thing of his life. But also, you see this progression in the character, both mental and physical, when he finally learns how to walk, and he can walk, and he's all there, and he smiles, and his brother, which is all you know him referred to as, his brother, and the narrator, he's really so excited about this. And so, yeah, I love that. So my question is, did you catch all the death imagery in the first paragraph? Just the first paragraph. It has like words like dead, bleeding tree, rotting, ranked, and then the phrase rocked back and forth like an empty cradle, which is so ominous, and the names of our dead. So I just love that whole paragraph. As I was explaining, it's so poetic and so well written. So that is a good way to ease you into a story that's very dark and is about certain themes, such as death and other things. So I don't know if you caught all of those.
No, I didn't. Wow.
Yeah. So it's easier. This is definitely a story that you want to read, and then after you read it, and then wait a week, read it again, because you catch things. So that was my first question. You can ask your second one now.
Got it. So our next one I have, does our protagonist like Doodle? Because he says he's a burden, but on the other hand, we're getting some things that sound like he cares for him. I'm not really sure. And then the other question is, towards the end of these pages, he says he was embarrassed having, a brother at that age who couldn't walk. Mm-hmm. So my question was, when I was reading it, was, can he even walk? Like, is it possible, or is this going to end badly? And if he is able to walk, is it going to hurt him? Because I'm sure in the back of the mind of most people when reading this is, something's going to kill this kid. What is it going to be? So everything that happens, you think is this gonna hurt him? Is this gonna be his doom? And like that's it. It's burning in you.
Which is why this is such a great story. It makes you think and worry and feel certain things that they want you to. And so, yeah. And also, in answering to your first question, I think that from the very beginning, he said he was a huge disappointment, and that really sets up how he feels about him for the whole story. But I do agree with you. It's kind of confusing because at points he says, oh, he cares and he loves his brother. At other points he's like, I don't like this brother. And because it also mentions him, I think on the first page, it mentions that he tries to kill his brother, or he had plans to suffocate him with a pillow. I don't know if you remember that, but anyway, so he mentions that he had plans to suffocate his brother using a pillow, but he didn't. So that shows that he has these like bouts and moments of hatred toward him, but also he knows deep down that he loves him. And there's a greater theme that we'll discuss later as we progress through the story. But
all right.
And so in regards to that, my second question on page 2, the narrator, also known as the brother, says sometimes I accidentally turned him over, but he never told Mama. So my question to you is, do you think that those times were truly accidents, or is he just saying that?
Like when he turns the wagon over? Sorry, I'm looking through now to see if I can find what you're talking about.
Okay, so on the third paragraph in page 2, that starts with, he was burdened in many ways. It says down at the first...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I accidentally turned him over, but he never told Mama. Yeah, I think it was an accident. Honestly, I don't think he was malicious enough to purposefully... I don't know. Later in the story. Actually, in the same page, he does things to purposefully put Doodle in distress.
Yeah,
so
and then it says, to discourage him coming with me. This is right before that sentence. I'd run him across the ends of the cotton rows and careen him around the corners on 2 reels.
Yeah, okay, well then, no, I think he was purposefully trying to make it difficult for him.
Yeah, okay, so in regards to that, it says accidentally. How do you feel about that word choice?
Accidentally?
Yes.
I feel like it's true there. I feel like it makes sense. I mean...
But that was right after he said to discourage his coming with me.
True, but
and we've already established that we think that this is kind of a malicious act, but also you said that you don't think he's malicious enough. So I think that the use of the word accidentally is kind of a punch in the face, saying this is a good guy, but he's like pretending to be good, and he says he accidentally. But also after that it says, but he never told Mama, which in my mind implies that he did it on purpose, but Doodle never told on him.
I feel like he's really honest when the narrator narrates this story, and I feel like that would undermine how honest he is in a lot of it.
Okay, yeah,
I
that makes sense.
I don't necessarily think so, but
okay,
sure.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Do you have another question, or the next question for your next pages?
All right. My next question is, does Aunt Nicey live with them? I was asking that through every time she was mentioned in the story.
Yeah.
Because it's not a very tasteful character.
Right?
And then my second question was, I think I asked a similar thing, I think, earlier, but, like, does he care about Doodle? Because, like, on one hand, like, you could say a lot of what he's doing is obligation, and you could argue that a lot of what he's doing is just, being a brother, give him a hard time, but also there's, like, sparks of hatred and, like, disdain in there, like, because he's, kind of disabled, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So when I was going through this short story with my language arts class, the theme for the story that we came up with, I don't have the paper with me, so I don't remember exactly word for word, but it was essentially pride masks your judgment, or something along the lines of that, because he was too proud and too embarrassed to have this crippled brother
Oh, I see that now.
He couldn't just love him. He had to go out of his way, make it difficult for his brother, and make it very difficult on him by pushing him to his limits far more than he could have ever done, which in the end makes him die. He kills his brother essentially by working him too hard, and not listening to him saying he can't do this right now. And so he just keeps running, but we'll get to that later. And so the theme and the message that's supposed to be portrayed through this is true, like, don't let pride get, I can't think of a way to, but it's his pride, it's his reputation. He doesn't want other people to see that he has a crippled brother. He wants to have his brother, like, be great. He wants to do something with his brother and show that other people that he's not terrible. And the way that's written, it makes it sound like, because I'm pretty sure this is on purpose, it makes it sound as if he's helping his brother, but truly deep down, he's doing it just for himself. Just so he's not the kid with the brother that can't do anything, that can't walk or run or swim or climb. Right. So, yeah, so my next question in regards to that, it says, do you think he's truly helping his brother or just trying to finish his own goal because of self-pride? That Doodle is just a big project of his that he wishes to complete.
I would say first time reading it, it seems like he's helping him and he's doing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But when I kind of read it again to get more questions, it became apparent that, especially at the end, we'll discuss this, when Doodle is ashamed, like, and feels bad, and feels like he failed when it didn't work out, shows that it is for the brother. It's not really for Doodle. If it was, then it would be like, it seems like he's kind of coaching.
Yeah.
But it's more of just really, like, tough pressure. And, like, you have to do this or else you failed. Like, there's no encouraging element.
Yeah, none. Well, actually, there's some parts that are saying, you can do this. And then as the story progresses, then it says, you have to do this or else you will fail and never get anywhere. But yeah, when I read this in 8th grade, I hadn't seen, like, Whiplash or that movie or any other movies like that. And then I just read this again after I had seen Whiplash, and that's the one about the drummer, and it's a very, very powerful movie, and it's very well written. I would highly suggest watching it. It has a lot of swearing, so watch out if you don't love that kind of stuff. But it works so well with the character, and he is vocally and abusive, though he yells at the person to try to get this done, and the whole movie is about him doing this and how the drummer who's learning from him reacts and how he progresses as a character, what he loses, how this affects him, the way that it is, like, there's positive things and negative things, and that really resided with me, and I could see it throughout this story. It's a very similar thing, but then there's also the element of that the narrator is too ashamed to have this crippled brother that he has to do something about it.
Right. I don't know, because I feel like one-on-one, the two brothers probably get along decently, and there's many moments where they discuss that, and I feel like when he's talking to him, he believes to him, like, he himself believes that he's doing this for Doodle. But then when it actually happens and, like, the deed is done, it kind of sits in his stomach, and he realizes that this wasn't for him at all.
Yeah, no, it was for himself and not for Doodle. So that's why this is a really good story, because there's so much foreshadowing and stuff that happens at the beginning. So it's a really good story to reread. And once you see the ending, you read the rest of it in an entirely different light of how the brother is toward the very end of the book.
Okay. So this is page 4? 4, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my main question when I was reading this, going back to the audience caring about Doodle, is the program of teaching him to do more going to hurt him? Like, where they discuss pushing him more, is like when I really got afraid, because I feel like it's pretty obvious at this point that this is going to be his demise.
Yep.
Or lead to it. And I want you to give your next question before I give my last question I had on this.
Oh, really?
Page.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. So I think this is the 4th page. On the 4th page, like right below where it starts with once, if you can see that.
Yeah.
So it says, once I had succeeded in teaching Doodle to walk, I began to believe my own infallibility, which means you believe that you can do anything and that you can't fail and there's no chance of failing. And that really shows like how he thinks of himself. And that, I think from that turning point, that's from where it goes like, I am all powerful and I can do anything and I can make Doodle better and whatever. But my question for you is, have you ever felt felt infallible, which is the adjective?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I would say so.
Yeah. So there's like, I'm gonna give an example. Like I've won like, so sometimes if you win a game that you think you're really good at, or you're just win, then then you win again, and then you win again, and then you win again, and then you feel like you're invincible and on top of the world, and you can't be taken down, and there's no way that you can ever lose this game, and then you end up losing, and it makes life a lot worse. But I think there's many times that I felt that I was invincible or incapable of failing when it's cases of a game, but that was when I was younger. But do you have an example of?
I feel like when I just finish making a video, I have this like my pride level like goes a little above how far it should be. Like usually it's a little below what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when I'm working on a project, it's right where I think is healthy. And then when I just finish something, I get a little arrogant. Yeah. And I feel like this, like all powerful, like I'm an expert in my field. Or with a lot of video games, at the peak of my play of it, I a lot of times feel like I am the best and I am unbeatable because I reach a point where I'm better than most of the people I know. But then I have to put myself in my place and realize that it's just a video game, and in comparison, I'm not amazing, so I should probably just enjoy it instead of rubbing it in anyone's face, which I have.
Snap! Truth comes out. Just kidding. I've been there too. Unfortunately, it's a bad place to be. But it's also a great place to be because then you feel like you're on top of the world. But it's also a bad place to be when you start being a jerk about it. I think the only thing worse than a sore loser is a sore winner. And I think that's very applicable, especially not in this case, but like in games and stuff. That's a saying that I really like. And so, yeah, I agree with you right there, especially with games and video games and stuff.
All right. So, my other question I have on this page is, so on the right half, the right column, second paragraph. During that summer, strange names were heard through the house. Chadu Theory, Amiens, Soisons, and her blessing at the supper table, Mama once said, and bless the Pearsons, whose boy Joe was lost at Bellew Wood.
Yes. Is your question, what are those things?
Yes. So at first I thought it had to do with when I was reading through it, I was like, oh, there's a drought, like there's storms happening, and like something terrible has happened, like there's some sort of natural disaster. And then when I was going back through, I'm like, why didn't I just look at the bottom?
Right.
At the bottom it says
footnotes.
World War I battle sites in France.
And yeah, when I saw that, I was like, why in France? And why specifically? Because this takes place in 1918, so I mean that makes sense. But why specifically France? Are they in France? Probably not, because of where the ibis comes in. But
they're in the U.S. and also they have cotton fields.
Yeah, so that means they're probably in the South, but probably definitely. So yeah, that I was thinking the same thing. But also when they started saying that, I was thinking, are they like saints or something? Like, because that's not the first time that if they were saints or something, or some religious figure, that wouldn't be the first time that it's mentioned in this, because it also line that I really like when the brother's like, "Hey, I have something to show you," and then like when Doodle's about to walk, and it says, "If we produce anything less than less tremendous than the resurrection," which are, for those who are unfamiliar, is when Jesus came back to life supposedly. She was going to be disappointed, and then also the aunt mentions that the call, which was the womb pocket or whatever you want to call it, that is like that calls were made from Jesus' nightgown. So obviously there's some religious like undertones in the story. So I was thinking that was maybe something, but it probably isn't, because it's not.
Well, there's a lot of short stories, written in this time. I can't give you any. I mean, besides To Kill a Mockingbird, like there's something about there's something about I don't know, older American stories that take place in the South, anywhere between I'd say 1880 and 1950. They have this tone where like everything's like happy-go-lucky and wonderful, but there's terrible things happening in the world and in the country at the same time that we know of, and the story is very aware of, and is usually like what the story revolves around. Not necessarily, but you know what I'm talking about in To Kill a Mockingbird. And just actually talking about this now, it makes me wonder, is there going to be stories like this about our time? Because there's always bad things happening. And of course, in general, you could probably say modern day is a lot better than how things were in the times of these stories on a general scale.
Yeah.
But will we ever look back and read stories about this modern life that we're living and have that undertone of fear or like foreboding danger? And I feel like in non-fantastical fantasy stories, we also have that, because things are terrible in the Dark Ages, and unless it's really, really fantastical, you know what else is happening.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. I don't know.
Sense.
It's kind of a difficult feeling to describe.
This is less a story or a question about the story and more of a question about the world and time and how that's going to affect the ways that stories are going to be told, like that take place between 1990 and 2030 or something, because our technology has grown so much, and there's different things that are happening, like the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff, or not, like the Middle East, all those wars that were being fought, and stories that, so there's things like that, and I totally understand what you're talking about. That's a really good question, and is very interesting to think about. Do you have any more questions, or?
No, just on that page. That's the end of the questions on that page.
Okay, so let's move on to the 5th page. Yep, the 5th page. I don't have any questions specifically for the 5th page, but now that I'm seeing what was on the 5th page, did you, or when you saw that there was a dead bird, and this bird is so innocent, but it also is crippled, much like Doodle, and ends up dying, did that click with you? Did you think, oh yeah, that's definitely a symbol for
At
Doodle's
first I was
death?
like, is this? Because that doesn't seem right. And then more stuff happened with it. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely Doodle. But my questions was, besides, is Doodle a Scarlet Ibis? In that case, what is the beauty of Doodle, and will he die? Because if you read specifically what is said about the Scarlet Ibis, is it Ibis or is it Ibis?
Ibis or Ibis. I pronounce it Ibis, but there's also people who pronounce it Ibis, and I'm pretty sure none of them are incorrect.
Okay, good. Because we can assume from the metaphor that whatever the narrator says about the Scarlet Ibis
will be applicable to
also
Doodle.
apply, yes, in some way to Doodle accurately.
Yes.
And I don't know. I feel like it's a good discussion because it's never directly talked about with Doodle. I mean, it's kind of like off to the side talked about, but
yeah,
there's something beautiful about it, but also it's death.
Yeah,
And-
it's the beauty in the brutality, and that's
Right.
yeah.
And everyone stops and stares, but nobody's going to do anything about it. And my other question that I didn't even ask originally when I was reading this, but now that I'm looking back on it, does Doodle connect with the bird? And does he understand why it's like him? Because we're reading it again. You see Doodle, he doesn't say a thing.
You know?
He actually has his hands clasped at his throat, and he just stood still. And then when everyone else is going inside and, like dismissing it, he kneels down by it and he wants to bury it.
Yeah. Which is important.
And I was like, oh, does Doodle understand? I mean, he doesn't know he's going to die, but like, does he see
something about himself in the bird? He knows how it feels to not be able to fly. Like, well, clearly he can't fly at all, but he understands how it feels to not be able to do something that everyone else can do or something.
Right.
So what your question is, we obviously can see the connections between this Ibis and Doodle, especially toward the end. Well, after you've read it, you can see the connections. But you're asking, does he see them or something? That's a good question. I don't know. I definitely think so. I definitely think he empathizes, or is it sympathizes?
Sympathizes is pity, empathizes is relate.
Yeah, so it's empathy. He feels empathy toward this bird.
Right. Well, I also feel like it's maybe a tiny bit far-fetched that he would see that.
Yeah.
Because he can see that it's
like
disabled.
A
but
small child.
He doesn't know that he's going to get hurt.
Yeah,
He's not going to die. He doesn't know that. And like,
I think the main reason that it's there is to, foreshadow and show the death and all of this. And also the fact that he helps it shows his personality, and it shows the beauty in death, and that all things die, which is...
That's the theme. That's the theme, everyone. Shut it down. Everything dies. You're going to die. Noah's going to die. The podcast is going to die.
Well, it actually is. So the world is ending, as we discussed. Anyway, So I was actually watching Forrest Gump, which I know I just already mentioned this episode, but in that, Forrest says,
Mama always said dying was a part of life.
And I think that is very true, and I think that this is something that shows that. Do you have anything else on that page?
No. I think
Okay.
that's it then.
So let's discuss the ending.
Final page. Okay.
Everything has been building up to this. All of the mentions of death, all of the foreshadowing of the brother pushing Doodle too hard.
At last, Doodle dies.
At last, finally, that was the best part of the entire thing. Oh, beautiful.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh,
Thank
man.
goodness. Good riddance. He was the worst character ever. The ending. How did you like the ending?
I thought it was just, sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's really tragic, poetic.
Beautiful.
Okay, my questions, I guess, were, is the protagonist not aware of how fragile Doodle is, or is he just a very cruel person?
Mm-hmm.
Does Doodle believe his brother and feel like he's a failure? I think we discussed that earlier. Like,
yeah. When you said that, I remembered reading the word ashamedly, and in that, after he fell off the little tiny boat, and he had fallen face first, and then the brother helped him up, and he wiped the mud off his face, or off his pants, and then he smiled at me ashamedly, it says. And so, with that, it's him acknowledging and feeling as if he did something entirely wrong. And it said, right after that, it said he had failed, and we both knew it. So we started back home, racing the storm. And then we said we never spoke. And then that whole... the last 5 paragraphs or something, they're just so well written. Like the whole last chunk from... the whole last page is really good. And it really tugs at the heartstrings. So... Was that a yawn?
No, it was... yeah, it was a yawn. But I was also trying to be dramatic.
Yeah. Got
and
it.
being
Okay, so do you have anything else to say about the ending?
my other questions were,
Mm-hmm.
does he feel responsible for Doodle's death?
Yeah, because
And,
it doesn't really say that. It just says Doodle.
And did
I
Doodle
screamed.
die from being pushed too hard?
Yes.
Like, what is cause of death? Is it's just too much, and then just is one of his internal organs gave out?
Well, the thing is, it mentioned things about like the lightning hitting trees and splintering, and then splintering them, and like the rain hitting really hard on the narrator's face. And he's older and he can take that, but Doodle probably can't. So a lot of things kind of imply that he died because of the storm, because of the mud, getting stuck in the mud, and then stepping on something sharp or being impaled or something. I don't know, but I don't think it was purely the stress that killed him. I think it was the stress of wanting to impress his brother and not being able to that finally made him crack and stop in his tracks and just give up. And other things like the conditions, he might have drowned. It doesn't really go in depth, but that's a good question. I don't exactly know how he died.
I don't want to know.
You don't want
to think
really?
about it. No, I'm not curious enough to know the death of Doodle because it's sad.
Aw. Well, that's good that you feel that way because that's what you're supposed to feel. So.
Doodle,
Doodle, why?
I love you. Well, that was the Scarlet Ibis.
I have one more question.
Yeah?
Throughout the entire story, did you notice all of the references to red?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of them. And in literature, whenever something is red or mentioned red, it means danger or death or something of that sort. So that is a very good way to give the further, like, tell us that something bad is going to happen or someone's going to die or something. So just
Do you
there's
want
like
to talk about color symbolism?
Oh, symbolism.
One of these episodes, we got to read the yellow wallpaper then.
One of these episodes that doesn't ever gonna exist because this podcast is ending?
Yeah, obviously.
What's the yellow wallpaper?
Oh, you've never read the yellow wallpaper?
Never heard of it.
Oh, it's a short story.
I assumed as much, but we need to read that sometime. Discuss
more scary stuff, twists, stuff like that.
Wow, is a 6,000 word short story.
Yeah, it's a long one. It's a long one for sure.
It's a long on?
I like. Sorry, I was doing the thing where older people say one as just apostrophe UN.
Oh yeah.
It's really difficult to understand, but yeah, no, it's. I remember it was quite the read. I think it's about what the Scarlet Ibis was as far as time wise when I remember reading it.
Oh, okay, so it's not very long at all. But oh yeah, it's 10 pages. That's not very long at all. It's the longest short story that we've discussed. Oh, this PDF also has pictures though. So I mean,
oh, I never read it with pictures.
Yeah. Well, they're just like little tiny sketches, so it's really not that long at all. So I mean, we can read that, but guys, thank you for listening to this final episode of this short run of the podcast. Another like micro little episode will probably just be me because it's harder to schedule two people to talk. So I'll probably explain everything. Links will be in the show notes of that episode, not this one, of where you can find the new podcast. And it will this podcast will remain on YouTube forever, and as long as YouTube is around. So to finalize this podcast, we have one more thing to do, and that is to read from the Corny Humor book of Corny Humor.
I'm gonna start tearing up.
Aw,
start tearing up.
It's okay, Tendo. Okay. Why do elephants have trunks?
Why, Noah?
Because they don't have pockets to put things in. I like that one. I like that one a lot. Wow, these last two jokes have been zingers.
Yeah. Yeah, they have been, Noah. They have been.
And that is the end of the Nomich and Supertendoboy podcast. Thank you for listening. Enjoy our next one.
Bye.
One.
2.
Three. Let's start over. Okay. 1. I feel like you're doing this on purpose to me.
One more
Okay.
time.
Okay. 1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
7.
8.
Okay, that's good.